Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again, and boy, have I got a tale that'll leave you distressed tonight. Let's see what the woods have whispered to me this time. Ah yes, here we are, the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. Beautiful country, 14,000-foot peaks. Alpine basin so remote you could scream for a week and nobody'd hear you. The kind of wilderness that swallows people whole and doesn't even burp. Now, the Ute people who knew these mountains long before anyone else, they had long known about certain basins where the wind sounds wrong, where animals won't go, where something walks upright in winter, wearing hunger like an apron at Long John Silver's. They called it by many names. Most of you know one of them, Wendigo. But here's the thing about protocols, kiddies. Emergency beacons, distress signals, all those pretty little safety nets we string up in the wilderness. Sometimes they're not calling for help. Sometimes they're luring something else, something that learned how to use our own tools against us. Tonight's story? 4 park rangers, 3 beacons, 1 ridge that shouldn't have anything living on it. Spoiler alert, turns out it does. This is your late night creature feature. Before we begin, I'm curious, where are you listening from tonight? Alone in your room? Driving through empty roads? Walking through the woods? Drop a comment and let me know. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's talk about what happens when you follow a distress call into a nest. The Beacon Protocol. Chapter 1, The Call. The storm hadn't started yet, but you could feel it coming. Jim Monroe, everyone called him West because he transferred from the Cascades 3 years back, stood at the trailhead watching the last light bleed off the peaks. September in the San Juans. No snow yet on the lower elevations, but cold enough your breath fogged, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and sits there like it's planning to stay. 3 emergency beacons had gone off in the same basin, all within an hour of each other. That wasn't right. Beacons don't cluster like that unless something's very, very wrong, or unless something wanted you to think that. Jim checked his receiver. 3 red dots blinked slow and steady from a restricted zone 8 miles in. Basin 12. No cell signal up there. No GPS tracks. Just those 3 lights screaming into the void. He'd been a ranger for 16 years. Seen plenty of bad calls, broken ankles, hypothermia, heart attacks at altitude. Found a guy once who'd been dead 3 days, frozen solid, eyes still open like he was watching the stars. But this felt different. This felt wrong in a way that made his gut twist. Jim turned to the rangers he'd called in. Holt Calder stood off to the side, tightening his pack straps like he was gearing up for deployment. 42. Ex-Army. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan before the mountains back home started calling louder than the ones overseas. Competent, reliable. The kind of guy who'd drag your ass out of a crevasse and then make you buy him a beer for it. Face like he'd already decided someone wasn't coming home tonight. He had a daughter back in Denver. 8 years old. Emma. Talked about her constantly. Showed everyone the drawings she made him stick figures holding hands with a man labeled Daddy in crooked letters. Lena Carver checked her headlamp batteries for the 3rd time. 36. Calm on the outside, haunted underneath. She'd survived something bad on this same mountain range 2 winters ago. Didn't talk about it much. Didn't need to. You could see it in how she watched the tree line, how she always kept her back to something solid. She'd been part of a rescue team that went looking for a missing skier, found the skier, found something else too. 3 rangers went up, only Lena came down. The official report said wildlife encounter. Lena never corrected it, but she also never went into the backcountry alone anymore. Eli Navarro, 28, youngest of the crew, stood a little apart from the others, brilliant with maps and weather patterns. Could read terrain like most people read books. But his hands shook when he packed his medkit. Last year he'd worked a missing child case that ended badly, real badly. 6-year-old girl named Maya disappeared from a campground. They found her 4 days later, what was left of her. Eli took 3 months off after that, came back different, quieter, kept touching his radio like it could protect him, like static and emergency frequencies could keep the dark things away. Jim held up the receiver so they could all see the blinking dots. 2-hour hike to the basin if we push it, he said. Weather turns ugly by dawn. We find whoever triggered those beacons. We get them out. We're home by breakfast. Holt grunted. And if they're already dead? Then we recover the bodies and file the report. Lena zipped her jacket. Her hands were steady, but her voice had an edge. What if it's not hikers? Jim didn't answer that, because she was right to ask. 3 beacons, same time, same dead zone. Either someone was in serious trouble, or something wanted them to think that. Stay tight, Jim said. Let's move. They entered the timber. The hike in. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. No wind rustling branches, no distant bird calls, not even the skitter of a squirrel in the canopy, just boots crunching dirt and the soft rhythm of 4 people breathing. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Eli whispered, "Anyone else feel like we're being watched?" "Always," Holt said, but he scanned the tree line as he said it. Old habits from Kandahar. Always check your 6. Always assume something's out there. Lena's voice was flat. Something's off. The whole forest feels empty. Jim knew what she meant. It was like walking through a house where someone just died. That heavy, waiting silence. Like the woods were holding their breath. He'd felt it before, once. 5 years ago, found a guy who'd been mauled by a mountain lion. Except the claw marks were wrong. Too big, too deep, spaced wrong. He'd filed the report. Never mentioned the part where the tracks just stopped, like whatever made them had simply vanished mid-stride. The trail climbed steadily, switchbacks through dense spruce. The light faded fast at this altitude, shadows pooling between the trees like spilled ink. Their headlamps cut narrow tunnels through the dark. Up ahead, somewhere in the blackness between the spruces, a sound echoed. Knock. Not a branch snapping, not a rock falling. A knuckle-on-wood knock. Holt stopped. That wasn't natural. Sounded close, Lena said. Her hand drifted toward her sidearm. Jim checked the receiver. The nearest beacon was only a 1/4 mile ahead. He looked at the others. Could be a hiker, signaling. Could be, Holt said, but he didn't sound convinced. Keep moving. But the knock came again. Knock. Closer this time, deliberate, like someone testing to see if anyone would answer. Eli's hand went to his sidearm. Jim. I know. They pushed forward, faster now, headlamps cutting tunnels through the dark. The forest didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of eyes and breath and things moving just outside the light. The first beacon. They found the camp 5 minutes later. What was left of it? Tent shredded into ribbons, nylon hanging off branches like shed skin, poles snapped and twisted, sleeping bag dragged halfway out of the opening, still zipped like someone had been yanked mid-sleep. Gear scattered everywhere, cook stove overturned, water bottles crushed, a backpack torn open with clothes strewn across the ground. The beacon blinked beside it, half buried in pine needles, still transmitting, still screaming for help that would never come. Jim knelt and felt his stomach drop. No blood, no prints. But the ground told a story. 2 deep drag marks gouged into the dirt, leading upslope into thicker timber. Not downhill, uphill. Into the dark. Lena swallowed. What pulls something uphill? Eli's voice cracked. Where are the footprints? There should be boot prints, animal tracks, something. There's nothing, Holt said. He was scanning the tree line with his rifle raised. Nothing human, nothing animal. Jim stood slowly. His skin prickled. We follow the drag marks, see what we find. They moved upslope, single file, Holt on point, Lena in the middle. Eli behind her, Jim bringing up the rear. The drag marks continued for maybe 50 yards, then stopped, just ended, like whatever made them had picked up its burden and kept walking. That's when they found the body. The first body. It was hanging in a tree, 10 feet up, wedged between two thick branches like someone had thrown it there. A man, maybe 30, wearing a red flannel jacket. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, neck clearly broken. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was his chest. It was open. Ribs spread wide like a grotesque flower. Organs gone. Just an empty cavity, steam still rising in the cold air. Blood dripped slowly from the branches, pattering onto the ground below. Drip, drip, drip. Eli turned and vomited. Lena backed away. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus Christ. Holt swept his light across the surrounding trees. How long? Jim checked the body without touching it. Hard to tell in the cold, but the blood was still liquid, still warm. Hour, maybe less. Where's the rest of him? Lena whispered. Jim didn't answer, because he didn't know, and that scared him more than finding the body. The second beacon. They found the second camp a quarter-mile north. Same story. Tent destroyed, gear scattered, beacon blinking faithfully, and another body. This one was a woman, blonde hair, early 20s. She was lying face down in the dirt. Her back had been opened from shoulder to hip, spine visible, vertebrae gleaming white in the headlamp beams. But no blood, like she'd been drained. Eli was shaking. This isn't an animal. Animals don't do this. No, Lena said quietly. They don't. Holt checked his rifle. We need to get out of here. Now. There's a third beacon, Jim said. Third site. Might be survivors. Jim, Holt's voice was hard. Look at this. Whatever did this is still close. Still hunting. We go back, call this in, get proper support. By the time support gets here, anyone still alive will be dead. They're probably already dead. Probably, Jim said, but we check. That's the job. Holt stared at him, then nodded once. Your call, boss, but we move fast and we move careful. The third beacon. The third site was the worst. 2 bodies this time, a couple, maybe mid-30s. They tried to run. You could see it in the scattered gear, the trampled ground, the desperate path they'd carved through the undergrowth. They hadn't made it far. The man was face down, arms outstretched like he'd been crawling. His legs were gone, just ragged stumps at the thigh. The woman was a few feet away, crumpled against a tree. Her face was intact, but her eyes were missing, just dark, empty sockets. And carved into the tree above her, scraped into the bark with something sharp, were 3 marks. 3 vertical lines. Eli backed away. What the hell is that? Counting, Lena whispered. It's counting. Jim felt cold spread through his chest. Counting what? Kills, Holt said. It's keeping score. The beacon blinked beside the bodies. Jim picked it up. The activation button had been pressed multiple times, desperately, someone trying to call for help even as they died. Jim checked the receiver. All 3 beacons were accounted for. No more signals. We leave, Jim said. Now. But then the receiver crackled. A 4th beacon appeared on the screen. Right behind them. 50 yards, maybe less. Everyone froze. That's not possible, Eli whispered. That's not. We checked there were only 3. The beacon moved on the screen, closing distance. 40 yards. 30. 20. Jim turned off his headlamp, whispered, lights off, now. 1 click, 2, 3, 4. Darkness swallowed them whole. They could hear it now. Footsteps, slow, measured, circling them, testing them. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. Then a voice drifted out from between the trees. Soft, human, close. Is someone hurt? Nightfall. They ran. Didn't matter which direction, just away, away from that voice, away from the thing using it. The forest became a blur of branches and shadows. Jim's lungs burned, his legs screamed. Behind them, always behind them, the footsteps followed. Not running, walking. Walking like whatever followed didn't need to hurry, like it already knew how this would end. They broke into a small clearing, a plateau, only flat ground before the terrain turned into boulder fields and deadfall. Stop, Jim gasped. We stop, set camp, defensive position. Are you insane? Eli was wild-eyed, shaking. We can't outrun it in the dark, Holt said. Jim's right. We dig in, wait for dawn. They set up fast. No fire, no unnecessary noise. Lena boiled water on a tiny backpacking stove. Holt checked their perimeter. Eli fumbled with his tent, hand shaking so bad he dropped the stakes twice. Jim stood at the edge of camp, staring into the trees. That's when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, measured, moving in a perfect circle around their camp. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. Headlamps off, Jim whispered. 1 click, 2, 3, 4. Darkness swallowed them whole. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice drifted out from between the trees. I heard someone crying. Is everyone okay? Not one of them had cried. Holt leaned close to Jim. That's not... Before he could finish, the forest repeated his words back. That's not... Same pitch, same cadence, but hollow, wrong. Something out there was learning. A whisper floated from their left. I can help, just talk to me. Then from their right. Why won't you answer? The voice began testing patterns, speeding up. Who's awake? Pause. Who's awake? The last version sounded exactly like Eli. Eli slapped a hand over his mouth. Jim's radio crackled, and a voice came through before he touched the button. Click Jim, don't look up. Everyone froze. The radio repeated, lower, almost shaking. Don't look up. Eli made a small sound in his throat. Then, despite every instinct screaming at him, he lifted his eyes. He shouldn't have. Up in the branches, clinging to the underside of a limb like a spider, was something tall and skeletal, ribs visible through pale, stretched skin that looked like wet paper. Antlers scraping bark massive, branching, crowned with points sharp as knives, limbs too long, joints bending backward, arms that reached too far. Its eyes were two pale, milky pits that caught the moonlight and held it. And it spoke in Jim's exact voice. Good boy, Eli screamed. But the scream didn't come from Eli. It came from something else in the woods. Something answering. Something big. Branches snapped. Snow exploded down the ridge. The sound of movement fast, heavy. Multiple sources closed in from every direction. Holt whispered, Jim, there's more than one. The footsteps multiplied. One set behind them, another to the left, another circling above in the canopy, another from the right. More, too many to count. Jim felt the truth slide into his chest like a knife made of ice. They weren't dealing with a lone Wendigo. This ridge had a family, and the family had surrounded them. Chapter 2, The Tower. Eli's scream still hung in the air when the thing in the tree folded backward up the trunk and vanished. No sound, no rush of movement, just gone, like it had never been there. But the footsteps weren't. They erupted in a tightening circle around the plateau. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Pacing, studying, learning. Jim ordered, Headlamps now. Light burst across the clearing. Every time a ranger swung their beam toward movement, the shape slipped behind another tree, silent, fast, impossibly fast. but in those brief flashes they could see them pale forms moving between the trunks, multiple shapes, different sizes, some on 2 legs, some crawling on all 4s. Holt hissed, "They're hurting us." Lena zipped her pack with shaking hands. Blood from when she'd bitten her lip dripped down her chin. "We need shelter. Storm's about to bury us out here." Eli's voice cracked. "Where do we go? We can't outrun those things." Jim didn't hesitate. "Old fire lookout, North Spur, half a mile. We hit it before the blizzard does." "That tower's been abandoned for years," Lena said. "Then it's perfect. High ground, walls, windows we can watch. Windows they can break. Better than being out here." They ran through the ghost timber. The woods closed around them, thick spruce and deadfall, snow deepening with every step, first dusting, then inches, then enough to slow them down. Their headlamps formed shaky tunnels of light swallowed by the dark beyond. Behind them, always behind them, the footsteps followed. Not sprinting, not lunging. Walking. Walking like whatever followed didn't need to hurry, like this was a game they'd played before, like they knew every way it could end. Eli gasped. "Why aren't they attacking?" "Because they like the chase," Holt said. "Wendigo play with their food." A branch snapped above them. Not behind, above. Lena flinched. "Jesus, one's in the canopy." Jim didn't look up, didn't want to see another pair of those empty eyes staring down. "Keep moving." The storm built around them. Flakes turned to ice shards slicing sideways. Wind roared through the trees like something alive and angry. The cold bit through their jackets, their gloves, searching for exposed skin. From the darkness on their left, a voice called. "Is someone hurt?" Not pleading, searching, interested. Holt didn't turn. "Don't acknowledge it." Another voice rose from the right. "This way." Long syllables, like a mouth learning how to shape words, like vocal cords that hadn't been used in a very long time. Eli's headlamp beam trembled. "It sounds closer." Jim could feel it too, the way sound vibrated through the trees, like the mountain itself speaking with stolen tongues, like the forest had learned human language and was testing it out. Eyes forward. Stay tight. Snow blurred the trail into white void. Jim could barely see Holt ahead of him, could barely see his own feet. Then, a massive shadow moved between 2 trees ahead. Not standing, not crawling, hanging, suspended from branches by its limbs, ribs visible through translucent skin, head cocked at an unnatural angle. Watching them pass beneath it, Lena whispered, "Oh God." It didn't attack. It just let them see it, let them know it was there, let them know they were being watched, studied, herded. Then it vanished into the storm. The tower. They crested a small rise and the fire lookout appeared like a skeleton against the sky, a dark wooden structure on tall stilts, glass on 3 sides, wrapped in blowing snow. The legs were thick timber, the stairs a metal ladder bolted to one side, 15 feet up, maybe 20. Lena breathed a shaky laugh. "We made it." The wind answered with a shriek. Jim scanned the base. No movement, no shapes in the snow. Move, up the ladder now. Holt climbed first, boots slamming metal rungs. Lena, Eli, Jim brought up the rear. Halfway up, something brushed Jim's boot. A long, cold fingertip. Not grabbing, not pulling. Just touching, testing the texture of prey. Curious. Jim didn't look down. He climbed faster. Inside, Holt bolted the hatch shut hard enough to rattle the cabin. The sound echoed in the small space. They stood there, gasping, dripping melted snow. Safe. For now. Inside the lookout. The room was frozen in time. Dusty map table in the center. Dead radio equipment on a shelf. Broken cot against one wall. thick frost on the windows turning them translucent. Old coffee mug still sitting on the table with frozen dregs at the bottom. Calendar from 2019. The storm howled outside, shaking the whole structure. Lena checked windows for cracks. If that wind hits wrong angle, we're losing glass. Holt tried the radio. Static on every frequency. He cycled through them all. Nothing but white noise. Storms jamming everything. Eli sank to the floor, staring at his trembling hands. Blood under his fingernails from where he'd clawed at branches. I saw its eyes. When it used Jim's voice, they changed. Like it was happy. Like it was playing. Jim didn't like that. Eyes on the storm, he said. We wait for a break in the weather, then we move fast. Get back to the trailhead. Call for backup. But the storm wasn't their problem. The knock was. A hollow thud against one of the tower legs. Deep enough the floor trembled. Dust rained down from the rafters. Lena backed up. Oh, hell no. Another knock, harder. Thud. The floorboards vibrated under their feet. Then a voice drifted up through the structure. Who's in there? Soft, polite, almost hopeful. Eli pressed against the wall. It found us. Holt whispered. That's just one. The others are still out there. The wind paused. The storm held its breath. The voice came again, right beneath the hatch. I can see your light. Lena clasped a hand over her mouth. Jim raised a finger. Don't answer. The Wendigo tapped the hatch gently, curious, exploring. Tap, tap, tap. Then, lightly, let me up. Eli whispered too loudly, Dear God. The voice stopped. Then it repeated his words perfectly. Dear God. Same tone, same breath pattern, same frightened tremor. But hollow, empty, wrong. Like listening to a recording of yourself played back through broken speakers. Holt tensed. Had just learned his voice. No, Jim said quietly. A second voice rose outside the window behind them. It learned all of ours. They froze, because that voice had been Jim's. Not close, not far. Just outside the glass, right there. More footsteps swarmed underneath the tower, heavy, deliberate, circling. Lena whispered, How many? Holt swallowed. More than 3. They're everywhere. The voices multiply. For a moment, nothing. Just wind, just storm, just the creak of old wood settling. Then Eli's voice, his exact voice, floated up from beneath the floorboards. Jim, I'm scared. Eli's actual mouth fell open. He pointed at himself, shaking his head violently. I didn't say that. The voice came again, a little different this time, testing variations, trying different inflections. Jim, I'm really scared. Then faster. Jim, I'm scared. Jim, I'm scared. Jim. Like practicing, getting it right, learning which version sounded most human. Lena's voice drifted from outside the west window. We should never have come up here. Lena grabbed Jim's arm. Her lips hadn't moved. Her mouth was clamped shut. The voice continued, smoother now, more confident. We should have turned back. This was a mistake. This was always a mistake. Things Lena had been thinking but hadn't said out loud. Private thoughts, internal fears. Holt's voice came from the eastern side. Something's moving under the floor. Holt's jaw clenched. He'd been about to say exactly that. Jim felt ice slide down his spine. They weren't just mimicking voices they'd heard. They were mimicking thoughts, reading them somehow, getting inside their heads. Then it got worse. A woman's voice, soft, loving, familiar, rose from directly beneath Eli. Eli, baby, where are you? Eli went white, all color drained from his face. That's my mom. That's my mom's voice. The voice came again, warmer, more concerned. Eli, honey, I'm so worried. Are you okay? Talk to me, sweetheart. Tears streamed down Eli's face. How does it know her voice? How does it— It doesn't, Jim said quickly. It's guessing. It's fishing. But another voice joined from outside, a man's voice, gruff and tired. Lena, it's Dad. Lena's hand went to her mouth. Her whole body went rigid. Baby girl, I know you're in there. I need you to open the door. It's cold out here. So cold. Her father had died 3 years ago. Heart attack. She'd been the one to find him. She knew that. But hearing his voice again, even twisted, even wrong, cracked something inside her. Don't listen, Holt said. He grabbed her shoulders. It's reading you. It's trying to break you. But the voices kept coming. A child's voice, bright and innocent. Daddy? Holt froze, every muscle in his body locked up. Daddy, where are you? I can't find you. His daughter, Emma, 8 years old, safe at home in Denver with her mother. But the voice knew. Somehow it knew. Daddy, I'm scared. Please come get me. Holt's rifle trembled in his hands. That's not her. That's not my little girl. The child's voice turned sharp, angry, wrong. You left me, Daddy. You always leave. You always choose them over me. Then it laughed. Not a child's laugh. Something else wearing a child's voice like a mask, wearing it badly. The mimicry shifted. Now it was layering voices, multiple sources speaking at once, overlapping, creating a cacophony. Jim's voice, we are all going to die up here. Lena's voice, I knew this would happen. Eli's voice, it's my fault, I shouldn't have looked up. Holt's voice, we never should have come. All 4 voices, overlapping, repeating, building into a wall of despair. Then silence. One voice rose, clear, calm. Jim's voice, but not from outside. From the radio sitting on the map table. Click. Jim, they're inside. Everyone stared at the radio. Jim hadn't touched it. Nobody had. The power was off. The radio crackled again. Jim, turn around. Jim didn't turn around. But Eli did, and he screamed. The mirror, pressed against the frosted window behind them, was a face. Pale, skeletal, eyes milky white. Mouth open, breath fogging the glass. But here's the thing. When Jim spun around, when all of them looked, nothing was there. Just frosted glass, just storm, just darkness beyond. Holt swung his headlamp beam across the window. Empty. Nothing. I saw it, Eli gasped. I saw it right there. We all saw it, Lena whispered. But the window was empty. Jim moved closer, touched the glass, cold, wet, and in the frost. A handprint. Massive, too many fingers, pressed against the outside of the glass. Still there, still visible. It was testing us, Jim said quietly, seeing if we'd open the door, seeing if we'd panic. Lena backed toward the center of the room. Did you see its teeth? Jim had. Rows and rows. Too many. Like a shark. Movement in his peripheral vision. Jim turned and saw it in the reflection of the opposite window. The creature, right behind him, reaching for his shoulder. He spun around. Nothing there. But in the window reflection still there, still reaching. Holt saw it too. What the hell? Don't look at the reflections, Jim ordered. Eyes on the actual windows, not the glass. The reflections lie. But it was too late. Eli was staring at the frost on the eastern window, at his own reflection, except his reflection was smiling. He wasn't smiling. His reflection was. And behind his reflection, a tall shape with antlers, leaning close, mouth near his ear. Eli! Lena grabbed him, shook him. "Don't look at it!" Eli blinked, focused. The reflection returned to normal, just his own scared face staring back. But they'd all seen it. The things were playing with them, using the windows, using the reflections, getting inside their heads before they even got inside the room. Jim grabbed the calendar off the wall and taped it over the frosted window, then the map, then anything flat he could find, covering the reflective surfaces, blocking the mirrors. "No more windows," he said. "We don't look, we don't engage." But even as he said it, even as he covered the last pane, he heard it. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Claws on wood. Climbing. Chapter 3. The Family. The tower shook hard enough to rattle dust from the rafters. Wind screamed against the walls, but the storm wasn't what shook the lookout. Something large hit one of the support beams below. Thud. Eli whispered, "They're ramming it." "No," Holt said. He was staring at the floor, listening. "They're testing it, finding weak points." Another thud from a different beam, then another, then another. Like giants walking their palms up the tower legs, pushing, circling, learning which one might break first. Lena grabbed the map table edge to steady herself. "If they knock this down, we're dead." "They won't," Jim said. "Not yet." He didn't know how he knew. He just knew. Wendigo didn't end the chase early. They savored it, drew it out, made you feel hope before they took it away. They ended it hungry. A voice rose from below. So close. Lena stiffened. Another voice, from outside the western window. "Let us up." That one sounded like Holt. A third whispered at the eastern side. "Don't hide." That was Lena's voice, her exact inflection. Eli covered his ears. "They're copying us." "Why are they copying us?" "Because they're deciding who breaks first," Holt said flatly. And that's when Eli froze. Not panic, not fear. Just stopped. His hands dropped limp at his sides. His eyes rolled back, pupils swallowed by milky white fog. "Eli." Lena stepped forward. "Eli." Holt grabbed her arm. "Wait." Eli's jaw loosened. His mouth fell open. His head tilted to one side as if listening to someone speaking inches from his ear, someone they couldn't see. And in a voice that wasn't his, a voice layered with many voices, shrill and deep and whispering over each other like radio stations bleeding together, he said, "They're climbing." Lena backed away. "What's wrong with him?" Jim stepped forward carefully. "Eli, look at me. Eli." Eli didn't blink, didn't breathe. Instead, he smiled. Slow, stretched, unnatural, too wide, corners of his mouth pulling back to show too much gum. "They're so hungry." His neck snapped backward in a violent jerk, vertebrae cracking audibly. Then the layered voices roared out of him, dozens of voices speaking as one. "We are ready." He vomited a gush of thick, black, tar-like sludge splattering across the floorboards. It bubbled and smoked in the cold air, hissing like acid eating into the wood. The smell was overwhelming. Rot and copper and something worse. Lena screamed, "What is that?" Eli collapsed, gasping, suddenly conscious again. He looked up with wild confusion. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, turning the whites red. "Why are you looking at me like that? What happened? Did I fall asleep?" Before anyone could answer, wham! Something slammed into the outside wall hard enough to crack timber. The carcass. The entire lookout lurched, threw Lena and Holt off balance. Jim caught the table to keep from falling. Something dripping hit the covered window. A long red streak dragged downward, seeping through the map he'd taped over the glass. Holt tore down the map. A deer carcass hung there, half flung across the outer ledge. Rib cage cracked open like a grotesque flower. organs dangling, steam rising into the cold air, fresh kill, minutes old. Something had thrown it, like a cat leaving a dead bird on a doorstep. Something massive. Jim whispered, "They're showing us how easily they can break this place." A hand, white, skeletal, too many joints slapped onto the glass beside the carcass. Long claws scraped down the pane, slow, deliberate, leaving deep gouges in the frost. Eli screamed and scrambled backward, knocking over the cot. Lena grabbed her sidearm, aimed at the window. "It's right outside." But then, the hand let go. The deer slid off the ledge, hit the ground below with a wet thud, and everything went quiet. Too quiet. Holt's voice was a rasp. If they're quiet, they're moving. The climb. The scraping started at the southwest leg. Slow, methodical, claw on wood. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Climbing. Jim whispered, "They're coming up the legs." Another set of claws began climbing the opposite side, then another, then another. Lena backed toward the hatch. "How many are there?" Holt counted the sounds. 4 distinct patterns, maybe 5, at least 4, maybe more. Eli whispered, "Wendigo are supposed to be solitary." "Not these," Jim said, "not this mountain." The climbing got faster, more urgent. Scritch, 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 scritch. One reached the underside of the cabin floor. They could hear it move beneath their feet, pacing back and forth, testing the boards, breathing. The Wendigo began tapping on the planks directly under Jim's boots. Tap, tap, tap. Then, in Jim's exact voice, "Let me in." Jim stepped back. Lena whispered, "We can't stay. They're going to get inside." "We drop down. We die faster," Holt said. "We stay. Barricade. Fight if we have to." Jim made the call. We hold. But then, the storm cleared for just a second. Clouds parted. Moon broke through. And in the sudden silver light, every window reflected a different shape moving in the trees below. Tall ones, small ones, some on 2 legs, some crawling on all 4s like animals, all crowned with bone antlers that caught the moonlight. Moving as one, coordinated, organized. Moving toward the tower. Dozens of pale eyes reflected back at them, glowing faintly, watching, waiting. Lena whispered 4 words that iced the room. "This is a nest." The knock. A knock at the hatch. Not from below, from above, from outside. 3 sharp raps. Knock, knock, knock. Everyone stared at the sealed hatch. Then a voice female, breathless, desperate. "It's Cassie Grant from Tower 5. I got your distress call. Please, please let me in. They're everywhere." Jim and Holt exchanged looks. Tower 5 was 8 miles west, different ridge entirely. "Please," the voice sobbed, real fear, real panic. "I can hear them climbing, please." Lena moved toward the hatch. "We have to." "Wait," Jim said. "Jim, she's a ranger." "How did she find us?" "The distress call." "We never sent one." Silence. The voice outside the hatch came again, still female, still desperate. "Please, I'm hurt. I think my leg's broken." Holt raised his rifle toward the hatch, whispered, "It's them." "We don't know that," Lena hissed. "Yes, we do." Another knock, harder, more insistent. "Please, they're right behind me." The voice was perfect, human, terrified, everything you'd expect from someone about to die. Jim made a decision he'd regret for the rest of his life. "Lena, check the hatch. Crack it. Just an inch." "Jim," Holt started. "If it's really her and we don't help, that's on us." Lena moved to the hatch, slowly unbolted it. Her hand shook, She looked at Jim. He nodded. She cracked it open. Just an inch. A face appeared in the gap. Woman, mid-30s, short dark hair, ranger uniform, Park Service badge, blood on her face, eyes wide with terror. Oh, thank God, thank you, please. She reached for the hatch, and bone claws punched through her chest from behind. The hand burst out through her sternum in an explosion of blood and shattered ribs. Claws spread wide, grabbed, pulled. Cassie Grant's scream was cut short as the hand retracted, yanking her backward off the ladder. Blood sprayed across their faces, warm, copper. They slammed the hatch shut. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Eli, shaking, covered in Cassie's blood, whispered, "I think I literally just shit my pants." Holt stared at him, then a sharp, harsh laugh escaped. "Get in line." Lena made a sound between a sob and a laugh, the kind that comes when your brain can't process what just happened, so it tries humor instead. Jim wiped blood from his face. That wasn't funny. "No," Holt agreed, "but if we don't laugh, we're gonna scream." From below, they heard Cassie scream. Real this time, not cut short, long, agonized, then wet sounds, tearing, crunching. More screams from multiple voices joining in, but they weren't helping her. They were feeding. The screaming stopped. Eli wiped his eyes. She was real. She was a real person. "I know," Jim said quietly. "They used her as bait." "I know. We let her die." "We didn't." Jim stopped. "Because maybe they had. Maybe if they'd opened the door faster. Maybe if they'd pulled her in. Maybe. But probably not. Probably she'd been dead the moment she knocked." A pale hand curled over the windowsill. Then a second. Then antlers rose into view. A Wendigo pulled itself toward the glass, mouth unhinging with a slow, wet crack. And behind it in the darkness below, another whispered, "Open the door." Eli cried, "They're all climbing." Holt chambered his rifle. Lena pulled her knife. Jim braced against the wall. The Wendigo at the window pressed its face to the glass. Steam fogged the pane with each breath. Its mouth widened, jaw unhinging more. Its throat bulged, and in all 4 of their voices overlapping perfectly, it whispered, "You taste so warm." The glass began to crack. Chapter 4, The Fall. The glass didn't shatter all at once. It screamed first long cracks spiderwebbing across the pane as the Wendigo pressed its skull against it, antlers grinding, teeth scraping the inside of its own mouth like sharpening them on bone. Jim held the wall, boots wedged against the floor. Lena stood beside him, knife out, covered in Cassie's blood. Eli cowered by the overturned cot. Holt took position in the corner, rifle aimed at the window. "Get ready," Holt shouted. Crack. The glass bowed inward. Fractures spread like lightning. The Wendigo's jaws split wider, too wide. Impossibly wide tongue unfurling like a pale, quivering rope covered in barbs. Jim yelled, "Holt now!" Boom. The rifle shot blew out the window in an eruption of glass, smoke, and freezing air. The Wendigo jerked head, snapping back, but it didn't fall. It clung to the frame, claws buried deep in wood like the bullet only surprised it, annoyed it. Black fluid leaked from the wound, not blood, something thicker. It hissed where it hit the snow outside. Then a second set of hands gripped the wall beside it, long fingers, translucent skin. You could see bones moving underneath. Then a third set, then a fourth. The family was climbing, all of them, together. Lena screamed, "We're surrounded!" Holt racked another round, but a pale arm shot through the broken pane faster than he could track and grabbed him by the throat, lifted him off his feet. "Holt!" Jim roared. 3 Wendigo dragged him toward the window. He fired blindly, boom, 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 shots exploding into the storm, into flesh, into nothing. But they didn't let go. Bone claws sank into his ribs, punching through muscle and scraping lung. He felt them inside him, felt them grab, pull. His scream was raw, animal. The kind that comes when you know you're dying. Teeth tore into his shoulder, ripping through tendon and sinew like wet paper. Blood sprayed hot across the snow outside, steaming in the cold air. Holt's body convulsed as claws hooked into his spine and yanked. His ribcage cracked open with a wet, splintering sound, cartilage separating, sternum splitting. Steam rose from the open cavity as freezing air hit warm organs. One of the Wendigo buried its face in his chest and bit down, tearing out chunks of lung tissue, swallowing them whole with a sound like wet meat hitting pavement. Holt's scream turned to a gurgle as blood filled his throat, bubbling up past his lips. His eyes stayed open, locked on Jim's wide, desperate, begging for help that wouldn't come even as the creatures dragged him through the window. His fingers clawed at the frame, nails tearing off, leaving bloody streaks on the wood. Then he was gone, swallowed by the blizzard. His scream echoed once, twice, then cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Lena staggered backward, hand shaking around her knife. Blood splattered across her face. God, oh God. Jim grabbed her shoulders. Stay with me. We are not done. The floor shook. Hard. Something big slammed the tower leg, the whole structure leaning several inches to one side before jerking back. Timber groaned. Metal bolts screamed. Eli shrieked. They're trying to drop it. Another impact. The western window exploded inward. Glass and wind and snow filled the room. Temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. A Wendigo crawled through the broken frame ribcage, clicking with each breath. Limbs bending backward at joints that shouldn't exist. Eyes empty and glowing with sickly white hunger. Lena charged it. Knife raised, scream ripping from her throat. All fear converted to rage. The Wendigo met her halfway, slamming her into the map table so hard wood cracked under her body, splinters exploding outward. She stabbed it in the throat, again and again, black fluid spraying across her face and arms, burning like acid. The creature didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't react. It grabbed her wrist and twisted bones snapping like dry kindling, radius and ulna breaking clean through. Her scream was sharp, short, her knife clattered to the floor. The Wendigo lifted her by the face, her feet kicking, boots scraping air, trying to find purchase, then its jaws unhinged. Rows of teeth, yellowed and jagged and too many, closed around her throat. It bit through her neck like tearing thick paper. Cartilage crunched, the trachea collapsed, arteries severed with sounds like snapping rubber bands. Blood poured down her chest in hot, pulsing gushes, soaking her jacket, pooling on the floor. Her body convulsed once, legs spasming, heels drumming against nothing. Then she went limp. The Wendigo held her for a moment longer, tilting its head like a dog studying something interesting. Then it dropped her. Lena's corpse crumpled to the floor. Her head hit last, rolling slightly to one side, coming to rest facing Jim. Her eyes were still open, still staring, still watching him fail to save her. Jim howled, a sound he didn't know he could make. The tower lurched again deep, structural groan, wood straining under impossible weight. Wind screamed, snow blasted through every crack. Wendigo climbed the legs like spiders, clawing upward, surrounding them. Eli sobbed in the corner. Jim, please, please, we have to get out. No, Jim grabbed him by the collar, pulled him close. We drop the hatch. Go under. It's the only way. The hatch. Their only escape. Jim slammed it open and shoved Eli toward the ladder. But the Wendigo were already waiting below. 4 pale faces stared up through the fog, mouths hanging open, breath steaming, antlers glowing faintly in reflected moonlight. They didn't climb. They waited, patient, knowing. Eli's voice broke. "Please don't make me go down there." A Wendigo's voice rose from beneath, using Lena's voice, her exact voice, still wet with blood. "Come down, Eli." Eli collapsed against Jim, shaking uncontrollably. Jim made his choice. "Eli," he whispered, pulling the younger ranger to his chest one last time. "I'm sorry." Another Wendigo climbed into the room behind them, bones clicking, breathing shallow, stalking. Jim didn't look back. He shoved Eli toward the opening. Eli fell, hands outstretched, mouth open in a scream that had no sound, right into the pack. They caught him gently, too gently, claws curling around him like loving hands cradling something precious. Eli didn't scream at first, just whimpered as they lowered him to the snow, almost tender. Then one leaned close, sniffing his neck, breath hot and rancid like spoiled meat. Its tongue, long, gray, covered in tiny barbs like a cat's dragged across his cheek, tasting salt and fear and the copper tang of Cassie's blood still on his skin. Eli tried to pull away, but claws held him fast, piercing through his jacket into the meat of his shoulders, grinding against bone. The Wendigo's mouth opened wide, jaw cracking as it unhinged, dislocating with wet pops. Eli screamed, then short, sharp, desperate, the sound of someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. The creature bit down on his collarbone, teeth grinding through bone like a nutcracker. Blood sprayed. Eli's body jerked violently, legs thrashing in the snow, kicking up white powder. Another Wendigo grabbed his legs, pulling in the opposite direction. Skin stretched, muscles tore, tendons snapped with sounds like guitar strings breaking. His screams turned shrill, animalistic, inhuman. They began to tear him apart. Ribs cracked open, the sternum separated, organs spilled into the snow, steaming, still pulsing. The Wendigo fought over pieces of him, snarling at each other, claws slashing, teeth snapping. One bit into his liver, another pulled out loops of intestine like Christmas ribbon. Eli's screams faded to wet gurgles, then choking sounds, then silence. They dragged what was left into the tree line, leaving only dark stains in the snow and scraps of his ranger jacket fluttering in the wind. The tower legs snapped. One, then another. The lookout dropped half a foot, jolting Jim to his knees. The Wendigo in the room turned its head toward him, slow and deliberate, neck cracking like ice breaking over a frozen lake. It crawled forward, not fast, not slow, patient. Long fingers flexed, tongue unfurled, ribs opening and closing with shallow breaths. It smelled like rot and copper and something worse, something old and wrong and hungry. Jim grabbed Holt's dropped rifle from the floor, blood slicked, still warm, one round left in the chamber. He raised it, aimed for the creature's skull. His hands didn't shake. The Wendigo tilted its head, examining him, then whispered in his own voice, "Don't." Jim fired. Boom. The creature's skull snapped back, crown exploding, black mist spitting into the air like ink, and it collapsed beside Lena's body, twitched once, then went still. But the tower was falling. The final leg gave way with a sound like a tree splitting in a lightning strike. The lookout rolled sideways, snapping timbers, glass and metal exploding into the storm as it tumbled. Jim fell with it. White out, snow, wood splintering around him, antlers knifing past his face as bodies fell with him, Wendigo tumbling through the air, limbs flailing, mouths open in silent screams. The world flipped, spun, up became down. Then, crash. Everything stopped. Silence. Aftermath. Jim woke in a drift of snow. Couldn't tell how long he'd been out. Minutes, hours. The storm had passed. Stars overhead, cold so deep it felt like drowning. Pain everywhere, ribs broken at least 3, maybe 4. Could feel them grinding when he breathed, shoulder dislocated, left arm useless, blood soaking into the snow beneath him, his blood. Too much of it. Wendigo tracks circled the wreckage, dozens of them, claw marks in the snow, drag marks leading into the trees. Bodies missing, Holt, Lena, Eli, all dragged away. He rose, barely. Every movement was agony, felt like his insides were held together with wet paper. Half frozen, vision blurring, couldn't feel his fingers. A howl echoed across the basin. Not 1, not 2. A family, a pack, a nest. Dozens of pale eyes glowed in the timber, watching him from the darkness between the trees. But they didn't move toward him. They watched, studied, waited. And Jim understood. They let him live. Not mercy, not luck. They let him live because they wanted him to tell someone, wanted him to go back, wanted him to send more rangers, more hikers, more prey. The beacons would keep calling, and people would keep coming. Jim stumbled away into the pre-dawn darkness, every breath a knife in his lungs. He didn't know how far he walked, didn't remember most of it, just fragments, falling, rising, falling again, blood in the snow behind him, a trail leading back to the nest. The one last scare. He reached the trailhead at dawn. Sun breaking over the peaks, light hitting snow, beautiful, wrong. The parking area was empty, just his truck, covered in frost. Jim collapsed beside the trail marker, fumbled for his radio, dead, smashed in the fall. He tried to stand, couldn't, legs wouldn't work, too much blood lost, too cold. This was it, this was where it ended. He whispered a final warning to no one. Don't go up there, don't follow the beacons, they're not for help. They're bait. His vision darkened, he slumped against the marker post, and that's when he heard it. Footsteps. Behind him. Slow, measured. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. Jim's blood went cold. No, not here, not at the trailhead. They didn't follow this far. They never followed this far. He turned his head, barely. Everything hurt. A shape stood at the forest edge, 50 feet away. Tall, skeletal, antlers catching the morning light. It tilted its head, watching him, studying. Then it smiled, rows of teeth, and whispered in his own voice, "See you next time." It stepped backward, once, twice, melted into the tree shadow. Gone. Jim screamed, or tried to. No sound came out. He passed out. Rangers found him 3 hours later, hypothermic, barely alive, covered in blood, some his, some not. He told them everything. They didn't believe him. 3 rangers missing, 4 bodies found in the basin, 3 hikers, 1 ranger from Tower 5, all torn apart. Wildlife encounter went into the official report. They closed Basin 12, put up signs, restricted access. But the beacons still blink sometimes, on clear nights, when the wind is right, and rangers still go looking, because that's the job. 5 weeks later, Jim stood in the hospital parking lot, discharge papers folded in his jacket pocket. 5 weeks, 14 interviews with Park Service brass. Countless hours with investigators asking the same questions over and over. Psych evaluations, drug tests. They thought he'd had a break. Trauma-induced psychosis, PTSD. He told them the truth every single time. They wrote inconsistent testimony in their reports. The official story: freak wildlife encounter, multiple bear attacks, tragic accident. Basin 12 remained closed pending further investigation. Jim knew better. But he signed the papers, took his suspension, let them think whatever they wanted. He could have quit, probably should have. But being a ranger was in his blood. 16 years, it was all he knew. And somewhere deep down, he figured if he stayed away from Basin 12, if he followed the rules, left before dark, stuck to the lower trails, he'd be fine. The mountains were big. The Wendigo stayed in their territory. That's how it worked. Right? He went back to work after 3 weeks of desk duty. Light rotation, nothing above 8,000 feet, home before sunset, every single day. It felt almost normal again. Almost. The grocery store. Jim pulled into the King Soopers parking lot at 5:45 p.m. Sun was setting. 15 minutes of good light left. Plenty of time. The store sat on the edge of town with a forest pressed close thick pines crowding the property line, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Jim always parked at the far end of the lot, old habit. Less crowded, easier to leave fast if you needed to. He grabbed a cart, moved through the aisles on autopilot, pasta, ground beef, garlic, onions, coffee. The routine felt good, normal, safe. Nobody stared at him anymore. The whispers had stopped. Life moved on. And for the first time in 5 weeks, Jim thought maybe he could too. He'd been thinking about it a lot lately. A transfer, somewhere flat, somewhere without mountains that touched the sky. He'd put in calls to stations in Kansas, Nebraska, even looked at openings in Florida, Everglades, completely different terrain, different ecosystem, different everything. No peaks, no basins, no restricted zones. The pay would be the same, the work similar, and maybe he could sleep through the night again without waking up to phantom footsteps circling his bed. His therapist said it was a healthy choice. Geographic healing, she called it. Start fresh, new environment, new memories to replace the bad ones. Jim liked the sound of that. He grabbed a bag of coffee, the good stuff, not the cheap shit he'd been drinking for weeks, and tossed it in the cart. Small victory, small step toward normal. He even thought about calling his sister. She'd been leaving messages, worried about him. He'd been dodging her calls, but maybe tonight he'd pick up, tell her he was okay. Tell her he had a plan. Tell her he was going to be okay. At the checkout, the cashier, older woman, name tag, said Barbara smiled at him. Find everything all right? Yeah, Jim said, and meant it. Beautiful evening out there. Jim glanced through the windows at the sunset, painting the sky orange and pink. Yeah, it is. Barbara bagged his groceries. Jim paid, grabbed the bags. You have a good night, hon. You too. He walked toward the exit. The automatic doors slid open. Cold air hit him. And for the first time since Basin 12, for the first time since Holt and Lena and Eli, Jim smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one, the kind that says maybe things will be okay, maybe there's a future worth having. He thought about Kansas, flat horizon, nothing but wheat fields and sky, no trees tall enough to hide monsters, no ridges where families of Wendigo hunted. Just normal wildlife, deer, coyotes, maybe a black bear if you were unlucky. Things he could handle, things that made sense. He walked across the parking lot, bags in hand, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The mountains rose behind him, dark silhouettes against the dying light, but for once they didn't feel like they were watching. They were just mountains, just rock and trees and snow. Nothing more. Jim reached his truck, popped the tailgate, started loading bags. The smile was still on his face. That's when he heard it. A whisper, barely audible, coming from the trees. Multiple voices speaking as one. Thanks for letting them know about us. Jim froze. His hand went to his sidearm. Not there. Wasn't on duty. Wasn't carrying. He turned slowly toward the forest. Nothing. Just trees. Just shadows. Hello? His voice cracked. Silence. Just wind. Just. The hand came out of the darkness so fast Jim didn't even see it move. Massive, pale, fingers long enough to palm a basketball. It grabbed his head. Claws sank into his skull, piercing bone, punching through cranium and squeezed. Jim tried to scream, but the sound died in his throat. The hand jerked. Once. His head tore free from his shoulders with a wet, cartilage-snapping sound. Spine ripped out like pulling a weed. Blood sprayed across the parking lot, across his truck, across the grocery bags. His body stood for a moment, neck stump pumping blood, arms twitching, then collapsed. The hand pulled back into the shadows. Gone. Jim's head sailed through the air, 30 feet, 40, arcing over the parking lot like a basketball at the buzzer. It landed perfectly in the dumpster behind the store with a hollow thunk. 3-point shot. His body lay crumpled beside the truck, grocery bags split open, pasta spilled across the asphalt, garlic cloves and onions rolled under the chassis, coming to rest against the front tire. The discovery. Miguel Torres, 18, cart attendant, was taking trash to the dumpster when he heard the thud. Weird sound, heavy, wet. He walked over, leaned over the edge, looked inside. A head stared back at him. Eyes wide, mouth open, park ranger uniform visible on the... Miguel screamed. Screamed so loud the woman loading groceries 3 rows over dropped her bags and ran. The police found Jim's body 12 minutes later, headless, blood pooling under the truck, groceries scattered. No witnesses, no cameras covering that corner of the lot. The official report, decapitation, cause unknown, no evidence of weapon, investigation ongoing. They never found what did it. But sometimes late at night when the store closes and the lot empties, the cart attendants hear whispers from the tree line. Multiple voices, speaking as one, counting. Basin 12 never reopened, but the beacons still blink, and rangers still go looking, because the Wendigo want them to. Because word spreads, stories travel, fear grows, and fear brings more prey. That's the protocol. That's the plan. That's the hunger. Folklore note, the Wendigo protocol. The Wendigo appears in the folklore of many Algonquian-speaking peoples across the northern forests and mountains of North America, from the Great Lakes to the Rockies. The name itself comes from the Ojibwe Wendigo, meaning evil spirit or cannibal. Traditional descriptions vary, but common elements persist. Emaciated figures with visible ribs and stretched skin, crowned with antlers or horns, eyes that glow in darkness, and an insatiable hunger that can never be satisfied. The Wendigo is transformation and consumption. What happens when hunger becomes something more than physical need, when it becomes madness. Among the Cree, the Wendigo is associated with winter starvation and the taboo of cannibalism. To consume human flesh, even in desperation, was to invite the Wendigo spirit, to become it. The transformation was irreversible, the hunger infinite. But older stories the elders share only in winter, when the fire burns low, speak of something worse than a lone Wendigo. They speak of nests, places where the hunger has lasted so long it's infected the land itself, where multiple Wendigo gather, drawn by the same endless void inside them, where they hunt together, learn together, mimic human voices to lure prey. The Ute people, whose traditional lands include the San Juan Mountains, have their own names for the winter spirits that walk upright. They marked certain ridges as forbidden, certain basins where game animals refuse to go, where the wind sounds like voices calling your name. Park services don't talk about it officially, but rangers know. Some emergency beacons aren't activated by hikers. Some are activated by things that learned how human tools work, things that know a rescue team will always come. The protocol exists for a reason. and the protocol has rules. If 3 or more beacons activate in the same restricted zone within an hour of each other, if there are no cell pings, no GPS tracks, no confirmed distress calls, if the weather is turning and the location is isolated, don't go. Because whatever triggered those beacons isn't calling for help, it's calling you to dinner. Welp, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrorific tale from the vault. Poor Jim. Imagine being the guy who has to explain why you came back alone, why 3 rangers went into the woods and only you stumbled out. Nobody believes him, of course, they never do. But somewhere in the San Juans, on a ridge that doesn't appear on modern maps, those beacons are still out there, still blinking, still calling. But hey, at least the Wendigo are having fun. If this story left you distressed in all the right ways, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every single day at 8 p.m. Central, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you'll be checking your emergency beacon twice before heading into the backcountry. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from? What would you do if you got 3 distress signals from the same dead zone? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Remember, not every call for help is human, and not every rescue mission brings people home. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the trees. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and the woods are always watching.